And welcome once again on Westplex Radio to What About Nutrition, the weekly program on this radio station that teaches you all about supplements and all kinds of great stuff. And it's sponsored by your friends at O'Fallon Nutrition in O'Fallon, Missouri, and David Gall, Mr. Nutrition, with me. And we have got some great shows lined up for you in the future, but boy, we've had some great ones in the past. We started this show back in May. And Dave, good morning to you, and we're so excited about today's show. We have a very special guest, and I have been using this particular product for quite some time. I can't wait for our listeners to hear about it.
Oh, I agree, Steve. This is really awesome, exciting stuff. And, I'm glad you mentioned that we've been on since May, because I should just point out real quick, we have been archiving most of these shows on our website at o'fallonnutrition.com recently. So any of our listeners that would like to go back and hear about, adrenal exhaustion or brain chemistry or how to build a supplement program, wheat, candida, they can look those up on our website at o'fallonnutrition.com.
Yeah, even nutrition for kids during the winter with all the colds and the flu.
That's right, one of our recent shows, and we just put that one up on the website this week. And Steve, you're right. This is a really exciting, day for us, because we've had this wonderful product in the store called Natural Calm by a great company named Natural Vitality, and we've been selling it in the store for probably 7 or 8 years since the early days.
And I want to inject here.
Sure.
Before I met you back in April of this year, and we started working together on the show, I've actually been taking Natural Calm. My wife brought it home. I love this product, and so. And I'm an honest-to-God walking testimonial of this product.
Totally.
And we're going to hear about this. And so anyway, I'm super excited to have our guest.
Oh, I agree. I mean, it's really a legendary product in our industry, in fact, and I defy anybody to start a health food store and not carry this product, because they'll be asked for it. But, I have to point out, of course, the nuts and bolts, which is that, this program is not intended to treat, diagnose, cure, or prevent any disease or condition. And folks, you should always consult your physician before making any changes to your diet, supplements, or exercise programs. And so with that out of the way, I want to introduce our guest. Her name is Holly Johnson. She's a national educator for Natural Vitality, the creators of Natural Calm. She's also a formulator. She's involved in the technical side, in choosing ingredients and helping actually come up with these formulas. So she wears many hats at Natural Vitality, and she's a wonderful speaker. And so without much further ado, Holly, welcome to What About Nutrition?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
It's really great to have you on, and I know we're really excited about this. And I guess, Holly, let's just jump right into it. And I'm going to pretend today that even though we've been discussing it off and on in many shows, that our listeners aren't that familiar with the issues surrounding magnesium.
That sounds great.
Perfect. So I'm going to throw this first question at you. Why is magnesium deficiency so common? I thought everybody just needed calcium.
That's a very common belief out in the U.S. these days is, generally you've got magnesium and you have calcium, and the two need to balance each other out. And as far as, most of us are concerned in the marketing end of things, calcium is kind of a juggernaut. It's promoted everywhere. It's fortified everywhere. And the issue becomes is that you get so much calcium in your diet that the magnesium side of it gets imbalanced. And people tend to take about a 10-to-1 calcium to magnesium. So in that, you end up getting kind of either an artificial deficiency by over-supplementing your calcium and not balancing it with magnesium, or, there's 300 chemical reactions in the body that require magnesium. So it could just be, even if you were pretty decent on your calcium intake, your body wants for magnesium more than you're going to be able to take in dietarily. So, it's found that about 86% of people are magnesium deficient.
Wow, so about 86% of people are magnesium deficient. And so it sounds like magnesium is in sort of a balanced relationship with calcium, like sodium and potassium need to have a balance. A lot of folks are familiar with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you think about it from an easy example on a muscular level, calcium is responsible for tensing. It's responsible for clotting your blood. It's an electrolyte that allows energy to be created within the cells. And the issue becomes is that you need the yin and the yang. So where you've got the magnesium is to allow your blood to flow freely and not clot. You need the magnesium so that your muscle can relax after it's been asked to work. And then you also need the magnesium that when the calcium is done going through a cell of like a muscle, let's say, and you're done contracting, the magnesium needs to go in the cell and restore it to a restful state. So where you don't have enough, you end up kind of like spark plugs in a car. They end up misfiring where they're not in a good balance with the rest of the engine, and you feel it kind of hiccuping and moving all over. Same with the body. If you've got calcium leaking into all your cells, there's a lot of energy waste happening, and there's a lot of fatigue that can then set in, because over 1 billion cells in your body, if all of them have a little bit of calcium leaking into them and they're all stimulated to some degree, you're going to end up feeling fatigued and have muscle cramps. You can even get heart palpitations. Your extremities can get cold. You can get a little touchy and irritable to loud noises and sudden activities around you, and feel anxious and nervous, and you don't really realize that what you're doing is trying to balance out the calcium. And I will have to point out, calcium is vital, for your bones and for electricity going through your body and energy, but you're going to need the magnesium so that, when it's midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning and you find you've still got your mind going 1,000,000 miles an hour, you're going to need the magnesium to calm yourself down.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So what I'm getting here is that you pointed out a really interesting point, which is that calcium stimulates cells. And it's almost as if, magnesium is the opposite. It helps them to relax.
Exactly.
I see. And I've read before that calcium actually stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, the part of our brain that controls fight or flight. And magnesium stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of the brain that encourages relaxation and recuperation. Is that true?
Exactly. Yeah, and there's even a lot of tests that have come out, actually, that the serotonin levels in your brain are modified by how much magnesium you're intaking.
Oh, that's fascinating. I've just recently heard some things about that, people talking about B6 and magnesium for serotonin levels.
Yeah.
Well, so some other questions here, and you touched on a few of these, but I think it's really important to point out to help folks recognize whether or not magnesium may be an issue. Would you mind listing for us some of the signs and symptoms of low magnesium levels?
Absolutely. On your first, if you could do it from a gradient of not too bad to very, very bad.
Sure, that makes sense.
You're starting your first indicators where your body might be saying, hey, hands up, I need a little bit of help here, I need a little bit of magnesium. You could feel fatigued, have a little bit of low energy, you find you can't sleep through the night, you might get fidgety fingers, a muscle spasm, like you get a tick in your eyelid where it flutters a little bit. You could feel a little anxious and nervous and irritable. And then it can kind of escalate to where you're getting headaches, you're getting major muscle cramps, like your back is locking up, your lower back is killing you. You try and go out and run a mile or go out jogging, play with your dog, your kids, and your legs will cramp up, the arches of your feet. You get Charlie horses really bad. Mm-hmm. You feel really weak. All the way to the fatigued point, a lot of fibromyalgia people, they say, well, I can't get out of bed in the morning, I ache all over. That's a high escalation of having your body have a lot of muscle tension. People with arrhythmia and abnormal heart rhythms where their heart will race and then it will go low. That also is modified by having enough magnesium. And then down to weakening of your bones, which brings me to an interesting point that in the U.S. we're the highest consumers of calcium, but we're also the highest afflicted with osteoporosis. So if calcium alone was the answer, we should have bones like Superman. I mean, we should just be men of steel everywhere. But we have a weakening of our bones, and our bones are porous and brittle. And you are what you eat. That is what calcium is. It's a very brittle mineral, where magnesium naturally is a very resilient mineral, more like cartilage in your body. It's very spongy, and it's very elastic. And so where you get a weakening in your bones also is because your magnesium needs for the body. As I mentioned before, you need magnesium in order for your blood to flow without clotting. That's pretty basic, and the body will always make sure it has enough magnesium in the blood levels to make sure that the blood doesn't clot. So people sometimes will get testing and go, well, on my blood levels, it says my magnesium is normal. Well, yes, pretty much your blood levels will always be normal unless you were dead, because that's the one place the body's going to try and hold on to the magnesium, and it will leach it out of your bones in order to maintain the blood levels correctly. So really you're going to be looking for your other signs that are more touchy-feely, like your fatigue levels, your stress levels, your irritability levels, muscle twitches, muscle cramping, headaches, even constipation, migraines, that sort of panorama of sensations.
Well, that makes perfect sense, and I'm glad that you touched on the testing issue. That was actually going to be a question I wanted to bring up, because so many people will say, well, I've had blood tests, no problems turned up, and you make this really important point that the body requires magnesium in the blood, and so therefore it'll maintain a certain level in the blood, actually taking it from other cells if it has to in order to maintain that level. And so it's not a really accurate test for the level of magnesium within your other cells. Is that true?
Exactly. Yeah, and even the level of magnesium then contained in your bones, because you're limiting it to just the blood, and the blood again is just trying to keep enough magnesium there so that it doesn't clot.
Makes perfect sense. We've got about a minute and a half left, and you've touched on the bones, so I'm going to ask a really obvious question, but magnesium is almost as, or if not more important for bone health than calcium. Is that true?
I would like to think so. I don't know that I'd have many people back me up on clinical tests to say that, but yes,
sure.
In my research for it, I do believe that. I've seen many people, from young ages where I grew up around horses and kids, and I was a teacher, and I saw many kids where you'd have one kid that seemed resilient to everything and one kid that seemed to break bones doing absolutely nothing. You'd see some kids roughhousing, rough and tumbling, training horses, roping things, and getting smashed around, and they seemed bomb-proof. And then you had other kids that would be walking up the stairs and slip on a stair and hit their shin on the next step and crack, their shin. And you go, well, how does one end up one way and one ends up the other way? You do have to look at when a baby's born, it's primarily magnesium and cartilage. And babies are very resilient. They seem to fall.
Sure.
They seem to knock themselves around a lot, and they're fine. It's part of their learning process of walking. And but they're drinking mother's milk, and for the first time, they're getting calcium into their body, and their bones are forming. And then, in our current diet, kids are being really inundated with calcium from the get-go. All their grains, their cereals, their milk, their orange juice, a lot of stuff has calcium fortification, granola bars. So in a sandwich, not only is their cheese going to give them calcium, their bread's going to give them calcium, and then their snacks, whether it's chips, crackers, little mixes of pretzels, they're all calcium fortified.
Right. So
and you look at it, their stresses and everything that they have that deplete their magnesium naturally, aside from their calcium intake, they end up kind of burning the candle at both ends. They end up very magnesium depleted.
Sure. Well, that makes perfect sense. Well, Holly, that's a perfect end to our first segment. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about issues surrounding magnesium and some great ways to improve it.
You're listening to What About Nutrition with nutritionist David Gall, who owns O'Fallon Nutrition. Find them on the web at www.o'fallonnutrition.com, o'fallonnutrition.com. Steve Casper with you. We'll be back with Holly Johnson, our special guest from Natural Calm, right after this.